Good morning, everyone. How are we enjoying the conference so far? It's still early. You're fine. You're fine. So, yeah, as was said, we're going to be talking about doing business with anonymous people online. We're going to be talking about privacy, and we have three of the best minds to talk about it. So I hope you enjoy. So before we begin, if you could all start with telling us a little bit about yourself. Lisa, why don't we start with you?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lisa Fridman. I'm a co-founder at Quadrata with Fabrice Chen here in the front row. And the way we're approaching identity on chain is we're bringing identity, reputation, and compliance to different blockchains and applications through Web3 passports. And just to quickly answer the question of the panel, whether or not you can do business with Anons, our answer is yes, but. So we think that it depends on who you are as an entity or as a person. And also it depends on whether or not you actually want to leverage your reputation for access to more nuanced use cases. And with that, let me pass it over to Warren.
Hi, Warren Paul Anderson, CEO of Discreet Labs. We're building scalable privacy for Web3 using zero-knowledge technology. We're also the lead developers of Findora, which is a layer 1 privacy blockchain focused on bringing more privacy to the Ethereum ecosystem. We work on privacy using zero-knowledge and believe that the technology is ready to finally kind of scale to help support use cases, identity, and the sort to bring more privacy to Web3.
Evan?
Yep. Hey, I'm Evan. I co-founded Mina Protocol, and I'm currently running Mina Foundation. Mina is a layer 1 cryptocurrency that is very deeply integrated with zero-knowledge proofs, both for making the chain very lightweight and verifiable, and for giving developers access to programming with zero-knowledge proofs. Think like Ethereum smart contracts, but native access to privacy, native access to scalability, native access to verifying big things. So yeah, that's what I work on.
Well, I think our first question, or the first question I think would have to be, because since 2008, when Satoshi wrote the white paper, the idea of not broadcasting who you are on the open internet has been a part of being in this industry, in this space. So do you think that having so many people who grew up in crypto hiding, behind, well, for example, a Bored Ape JPEG, asking them to now tell institutions who they are, do you think that could potentially turn off people who are already in the space saying, I don't want to do that? Evan, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so we have a very large community of people that go by their username first, like, they have some handle that is not a real name, and that is what they go by, and that's what they like to be called. And what's interesting is a lot of those people have gotten grants from us. They have been involved in the project, and to do that, they've had to be KYC'd. And that's something that actually most people have been cool with. It's a difference between, like, they understand, like, okay, my identity is XYZ online, and I want it to be that. I don't want it to be my, like, real name and everything. But there's an understanding that to deal with the existing financial system, you have to be KYC'd and stuff. And it's a trade-off that it seems like most people are okay making. Some people, I think, do bow out, but most people are cool with it.
Lisa?
Sure, just to add to that, this is a really good example of a user choosing to undergo the KYC process to get access to your grants. So in certain environments and applications, for instance, under-collateralized lending, ultimately unsecured lending, there is certain type of credit information that the lenders may require to be able to provide this more capital-efficient solutions. And so what we are doing with our technology, we call it user-controlled selective release. So the user can choose what type of information, more sensitive information, they share with what types of applications and for what purpose. If they don't want to reveal their PII on chain, completely understandable. We actually don't post anything that is PII in the passports, and we're also very careful about preserving sensitive information, which could lead to re-identification. But ultimately, if the user can get more nuanced use cases based on their strong reputation that they built in the real world or on chain, then it's for the benefit of the users. And so our technology enables that while also preserving privacy.
Warren?
Yeah, I think generally, especially when the requirement is to get paid, I think people are generally okay with selectively disclosing their identity. I think people are very selective of, especially in the crypto community, of where that disclosure is going to go. I think it's also, we're kind of moving toward a future where there's not only selective disclosure, but there's also revocability. So you can actually revoke access, to the identity information because, believe it or not, all of our information is everywhere. If you use the social network in the past 10 years, I guarantee your data is spread all over the web, unfortunately. But I think we're, passionate panel here about building a future where people's identities are not so easily compromisable. They're being secured on, servers that are deeply encrypted. And there's more power, to these individuals that can actually, control their data and that kind of thing. So I actually think it's moving in the right direction.
And to be fair to what you're all building and what is being asked, these are coming from, the government is the one asking for this information, for this to be done. It's not like you're running out saying, hey, who are you for you can offer my services. That's not happening. It's being done in a response to regulation. So to be fair, it's not it doesn't start with the companies, which I think gets left out of the conversation. People think it's coming from the corporate level when it's really coming from above them because you want to be able to do business too. But to that point, what do you think Web3 offers that can restore the privacy that Web 2 took away? You mentioned social media and how your information spread across the internet. Do you think Web 3 would make it possible to rein that in, Warren?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Web 3 is considered, especially cryptocurrency, like a fringe technology, a fringe frontier industry. And in those industries, you see a lot of technology that works like magic. It's in fact, there was a panel earlier on zero knowledge proofs, and they referred to it as moon math, and it is sort of moon math. And those primitives can be built to build a kind of safer, more secure future where we do have more control over, like I said before, our identities. I think it's, we have a responsibility to make sure, I have a 10-month-old daughter, and I want to make sure that her, her digital future is secure, and she's, not going to be compromised by the same things that we are in terms of our data. Those are the things that I think about, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there using this moon math, to make it easier and safer for people to transact online.
What do you think, Lisa?
Yes, absolutely. The technology does allow for privacy preservation where appropriate, and then for revealing certain information, as we discussed, to either get access to more capital-efficient solutions or to satisfy regulatory requirements if you want to do business with institutions. Full disclosure, I did come from institutional asset management, and so I do have a certain amount of appreciation for the oversight that protects investors who may not be professional investors, who may not have studied risk and diversification concepts. And so I do think that proper regulation may actually be helpful. And also technology provides the tools to enable, for example, the concept of keeping bad actors out of certain environments where regulated financial institutions are interacting.
Evan?
Yeah, I think this is one of the big opportunities with Web3. Like, we have this, these sets of technologies now which allow users to interact in ways that they can choose what information they're going to share with these entities. They can collectively control these platforms. I think we're still a ways away from it, but there's this huge opportunity to leverage all this technology to build these new applications and new ways of working online together that I think will involve a lot of pseudo-anonymity. I don't think most people are going to reveal all their personal information when they're on these platforms. They're not going to want to, and it's not going to be safe for them to do so, but it will be if they're able to selectively reveal certain things on-chain, publicly, privately. There's a lot that can be built, basically, that I think will be cool.
Right. Well, one of the things that I hear is about privacy being a human right. That this isn't something, it's not just an arbitrary thing that we're talking about. We're talking about something that a person is given, is born with. So what responsibility do you think industry, corporations have in protecting a person's data? For example, cybersecurity, for example. I cover cybersecurity. Is there should there be a push to better secure people's data so that it isn't leaked onto the dark web, accessed by hackers? What do you think about that, Warren?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the, I'm not a lawyer, but I talk to a lot of lawyers, and they, tell me these things in official terms and whatnot. And I don't think there's necessarily like privacy is a human right in the same sense that like our right to life and that kind of thing. I mean, we are born naked, so we're not actually born with privacy, right? Unless someone here is born clothes on, that'd be pretty impressive. But there is an expectation of privacy, and that's precedent setting by governments. There's an expectation of privacy here in the U.S., but it's a different expectation of privacy than, for instance, in China or Singapore or South Africa, right? The expectation of privacy based on the jurisdiction varies a lot. And so because the digital society doesn't have any borders, how do you apply those expectations of privacy in those jurisdictions to a borderless technology? And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. Things like GDPR, when they start applying to a borderless blockchain, it becomes tricky. But you have institutions like what they call virtual asset service providers or exchanges running in Europe. They have to adhere to those GDPR guidelines. If you have exchanges in other parts of the world, they have to kind of adhere. So it's kind of the checkpoints of where you're putting your information and how it's being stored. I'm a big proponent of using strong encryption. The encryption wars in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s are kind of why we're here today. So I think we're kind of facing that early days of that. We're protecting more privacy in this new realm.
Lisa?
Sure, and I agree with Warren that the regulatory environments vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but I think the general expectation, regardless of a country, is that if you're sharing your private data with somebody, an entity, or an individual, it's kept secure and it's used for the purpose that you're providing it at, right? And so to your question about cybersecurity, it's extremely important, not just in Web3, but in Web2. And again, I think that blockchain technology and encryption techniques enable better protection of sensitive data.
Ethan? Oh, Evan?
Thanks. I think it's really interesting to think about privacy as like a right, because I think it kind of goes back to like this age-old question of like, how do we prioritize like collective safety versus individual rights? It's like this question of there's these things we want to share, we want to have everyone share so that we can be collectively safer. I think things like KYC, AML are built in this, in theory, interest of this. But we can also see that like our information can be weaponized against us. I think if you look at things like the recent Roe v. Wade stuff recently, like there's a lot of cases where your information can be used against you. And I think that like it's really interesting to think about. There's this like question of where should we think about privacy as a society then? Where should it fall between this extreme of like everyone share everything, everyone will know everything, and our information can be used against us. We should try to keep them things private to be more safe. And I think in that, like, one thing I think is really exciting here is like a lot of the technology that's been developed recently in cryptography allows us to kind of make finer grained decisions across that spectrum. We can say, I'm going to share part of the information you need to know you can work with me safely, but I'm not going to share everything because I think that would be unnecessary and potentially unsafe. So I think what's really exciting is we're in this place now where we can start asking ourselves, what is the right amount of information that should be shared between everything and nothing? And I think it's like both like a collective conversation that has to take place and a regulatory conversation. Like the regulations are very much biased towards we have to share a lot of information that gets held by like these trusted data warehouses so that if everyone really needs to, they can look at the data if they really want to. But we have much more fine-grained controls now we're going to have to grapple with as like, you know, people in this technology and as a society. So I think that's where I start thinking about.
So it's really about transparency as to I'm providing you my data, what are you doing with it?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're choosing to make things transparent. What are you making transparent? What is it being used for? What are the risks of that? Yep.
So going back to just the culture, because, well, crypto Twitter, if you sign on there right now, you'll see any number of accounts with any number of JPEGs in their profile. But in your opinion, do you think, Warren, I'll start with you, do you think that is something a person should be concerned with before engaging, or do you think that you should, like how a lot of people now, especially in the corporate side, show who they are? Do you think that's necessary, or do you think people should look at the reputation of the account as more important than what they see visually?
Yeah, I think this kind of cultural scenario around, you know, people having pseudonymous identities online is actually moving toward a more merit-based kind of culture where you're judged based on the things you do, the things you say. There's actually, to be honest, greater accountability, even though it's, I know none of us have any NFTs, PFPs on here, but, you know, it's attributing that to, even like we were talking earlier that, you know, Ryan Selkis, CEO of Messari, he's known as 2-bit idiot online, and he has that PFP that he's had for a long time, you know. But people judge him based on the merit of his work and what he says, and like that's how he's respected in the industry, and he's been very strong about, you know, maintaining that, and that's a, you know, great example. I think that we should continue to support that. There's also this, you know, people talk about anonymity when they're usually kind of meaning pseudo-anonymity. And the distinctions are subtle, but most people, someone knows out there. I always kind of make the distinction between secrecy and privacy. Secrecy meaning, you know, you don't want anyone to know something, and privacy meaning you don't want the entire world to know something. So it's, there's, by the way, if you ever get a chance, read the Cypherpunk Manifesto. It's an awesome document. I would say it's like the Satoshi white paper for privacy, but it's dated back in the early 90s. It's an awesome read, very quick too.
Lisa?
A couple of points. One thing on what Warren said, being able to judge somebody's perspective on merit is a great aspect of the pseudonymous ecosystem, and it also can prevent a great deal of biases, be they gender or other kind of discrimination. Now, sometimes it is helpful actually to understand sort of the context from which the person is building their perspective, and so understanding a little bit more about the profile of the speaker or a writer on Twitter could put things into a different framework. And so again, depending on the use case, the recipients of that information may require a little bit more color to receive and perceive what's being said, especially if it's controversial.
I mean, I think it's kind of fun, you know, being able to just like go out and create a new identity and see you know, what you can do with that, and what kind of persona you can develop, and not be tied to like, you know, your existing like kind of real world, you know, first name, last name forever. So I think there's a lot that's like kind of fun about that. What was the rest of the question though?
Well, we're basically about, is that me revealing myself to you necessary for us to do business?
I see. And I think that, yeah, it goes back to like, you know, the reputation stuff we've been like, you know, you need to have a reputation to do business with someone. Otherwise, like, you know, I'm not gonna like give you a grant in some way to do something, and then I don't know who you are or anything about you. I think one thing that's like actually really cool about blockchains is they provide, like, you know, this just like is what they are, but they have like this trust layer that we can use to like, you know, create contracts between us. And so, you know, when you have like a DeFi protocol, no one, you know, people are binding themselves to the rules of that protocol, and in doing so, you know, no one knows who they are, but they're being bound to the rules, and the reputation, like, you know, the rules of the blockchain kind of like overwrite that. So I think there's this interesting thing with blockchain where we can step beyond like, oh, like, you know, I know your real world identity, and like we went to the same school, and I think I can trust you or whatever, to like something that's more based on like these hard like formal guarantees with contracts.
And maybe just to add to that, since we're talking about Twitter, obviously there's been a debate of how many tweets are produced by real people versus bots. And so that could be an interesting part of revelation of identity. If you want your unique voice and unique identity to be heard and received and respected, you may want to prove that you're a human. And then there are a number of applications in Web3 which actually want to do business with humans rather than bots, be they in gaming sector or broader metaverse.
And when we're talking about privacy and revealing data, in Web3, we're more like talking about me revealing myself to you as opposed to me revealing myself to everybody, just farther enough so that I can use the service. So, I mean, do you think Web2 companies may want to shift that way, or do you think they're going to be like, no, we'll stay over here, you guys do your thing? What do you think, Warren?
Yeah, it's. I think Web2 companies, I mean, just put Google as an example, would actually probably resist some of the technologies that we're building, you know, to help secure user data. Why? Because they have, you know, algorithms that are producing basically more stuff for us to buy, and there could be some, you call it exploitation of your user data, or the fact that some people don't care because they like getting targeted ads. But, you know, I think that the future is going to be much more kind of based on the accountability of that user data. What is actually, how is it being used? Where is it going? You know, can it be revoked? That kind of thing. But this kind of goes back to, you know, what Evan was talking about, and, you know, it's really like a reputation-based system where individual users have an online reputation kind of persona. Corporations also should have a reputation. I'd say some of the biggest corporations in the Web2 space, their reputation with regard to user identity is not good. There are some that are great, you know, but I try to use the ones that have a great reputation, but it's hard to avoid not using Google, right? You kind of have to use it everywhere you go. But I think, you know, where we're kind of pushing for is creating a path for people to build that reputation online, pseudonymous, if they want, and then if they want to monetize that, they can, you know, do that securely too.
Lisa?
Yeah, so as an economist by training, I agree that monetization feature or revenue model is driving a lot of the decision making for businesses. And so as Web2 is deriving quite a bit of revenue stream from sharing the data that they receive from consumers, it will take time to shift those revenue models. Now, if they see that in the Web3 ecosystem, the revenue models that are based on user-controlled identity are also producing meaningful results, there may be that shift. And as we see more blockchain technology powering services across different sectors, I believe this will be the future.
Evan?
Yeah, maybe this is pessimistic, but I think like all these Web2 companies are like fundamentally like just very aligned with like returning capital to like investors and not with users. And in that, I think like when they are making decisions around this area, they're going to make decisions that like are about like, you know, things like revenue, things like, you know, return to investors, that kind of thing. And So it'll take a lot for them to shift towards like a model which doesn't allow them to monetize data in the same way they've been doing for like the last like decade or two now. So I think there's like maybe really only like two ways that happens. One is that like if Web3 platforms start getting momentum where people are preferring to be involved in these new ways of being online in Web3. The other one is potentially regulation. I think that could potentially be a thing if like having all this user data becomes like a toxic asset. Maybe they will want to rid themselves of it. I guess also it could be that like if their brand is suffering enough, maybe they would consider you know, giving up a little bit of data control for some things. Like we're seeing this a little bit with like Google Chrome's attempt to make ad profiles locally developed and then with less data being stored on Google servers. But I think fundamentally they're misaligned. So hopefully something happens, but I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, we're kind of seeing that shift to like individuals, like influencers and whatnot, are kind of building their own personal brands. And we may see a future where individuals actually can monetize their own data, right? And you know, someone was telling me like runs an ad network, and they said actually individual data is not that valuable. And I said, yeah, that's because it's like it's not scarce, like it's everywhere, right? But if we start making our data more scarce and harder to get, then it actually will increase in value if economics works out, right?
Well, we have a few minutes left. How are you all enjoying the conference? You see anybody interesting? Is there anything you're hoping to see on the last day?
Yeah, having a great time. I've been in crypto a long time, so these conferences are awesome to kind of reconnect with people I've been working with for almost 10 years now. It's crazy, and then meeting new faces, you know, asking questions, sharing information, and it's always nice to be, you know, kind of post. Well, I guess in the process of being post-pandemic, where we can see each other again.
Yes, absolutely. A great place to reconnect with existing people in our network and meet new ones. And very excited that our panel did not conflict with the one that Vitalik is on in 2 minutes.
Yeah, we don't want to miss that.
Yeah, looking forward to that one as well. Yeah, no, conference has been fun. I think like, you know, bear market or whatever, like it's just like there's a lot still to build and there's a lot being built right now. So it's like a very fun time as we like transition from one stage of crypto to I think another. Yeah.
All right, well, everyone, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, you can follow the panelists on their social media and their websites. If you guys want to shout out your websites right quick, Warren?
Well, you can find me Warpaul on Twitter. Findora.org is the project.
Lisa?
Quadrata.com, and you can contact us at contact@quadrata.com.
Evan?
My Twitter is Evan A. Shapiro, and minaprotocol.com is the website.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.